Hello and welcome to Disc Dandies, a podcast where each episode two friends share a recommendation with one another. We talk about what we liked, what we would change, and try not to judge each other too much over our bad tastes. This episode we're trying to figure out if From Software should feel flattered, or if they should sue.
Yes, hello, welcome to Disc Dandies. It's so good to be here today. I'm feeling good. Jordan, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling like you know that NFT thing that's going on Twitter right now?
Oh yeah, so I remember the NFTs. That was like a huge thing, but apparently the bubble's bursting a little bit. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's just more the fact that was ever allowed to be a thing by our society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I am ready to talk about NFT video games when you are. That's how I'm feeling.
Oh, okay. That means that you have the original, and then you're selling NFTs that make you own the original. And then there can be copies, but you know exactly which one is the original, and it's like worth money. Is that what you're talking about?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. Sure. Sounds good. But before we get into our topic for this episode, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, hit me.
Okay, so as we've talked about the last couple of episodes, we are in the middle of Game Pass Summer. Man, I'm having a lot of fun with this. But in that vein, I wanted to ask you, how much Xbox exposure have you had in the past? Did you always own Xbox console since they came out? Yeah, we'll just leave it there. How much Xbox exposure have you had?
The original Xbox was technically my first console of that generation. I did not play it that much. I was more of a GameCube person when we got that. Though whenever we first got around to playing Halo, that Halo was really like my introduction to the Xbox consoles. I think for most people, play it at a friend's house. It was like on a demo disc or something like that. It was the beach level basically. That was kind of like my gateway into it. But I really didn't become like an Xbox person until the 360 came out, whenever literally everyone on the planet had a 360. And I played a lot of the Halos there and some of the Gears of Wars. I would never say that I was like an explicit Xbox person. But I did have, I think, the normal amount of exposure to it. I played my PS3 more. And I owned an Xbox One for all of a couple of weeks or something like that. Games Pass is definitely the most enthusiastic and the most engaged with Xbox that I've been.
Okay.
What about you,
yeah.
Will?
Oh, yeah, I had very little Xbox exposure. We were really a PlayStation family. I don't know exactly why. That's just kind of how it played out. I remember getting the original PlayStation, kind of late 90s, and I think I always just wanted the next one of those. I did very briefly have an original Xbox and played one or two games on it, but not all that much. So I have very little Xbox exposure. That being said, I know that there were a couple of Xbox original games throughout the years, and then PlayStation, of course, has theirs. We're not going to talk about Nintendo. That's a whole another discussion. But in your opinion, who do you think had the best original lineup over generations? Do you think it's Xbox or PlayStation?
It's been a weird kind of thing lately because you see a lot of the games that were exclusive to those consoles being remastered and put out on everything these days. That seems to be the trend. So it kind of muddies the water in terms of talking long-term exclusives. Like Resident Evil 4, for example, was exclusive to the GameCube for a little bit, and then it came out on everything under the sun forever. And so if we're just talking within generations, I think PlayStation, between those two companies, between PlayStation and Xbox, definitely had the exclusives. Like between all of the JRPGs and then your Uncharted's and God of Wars and stuff like that, it was just I like Xbox had Halo. Outside of that, I think like maybe Fable is really the only other notable one for me. I think the rest were just like fine, you know. Whereas a lot of like my formative video games were on PlayStation.
I'm biased, but I think that I would have to agree. I definitely think when you think of like PlayStation, those are at least the originals that I myself are more likely to want to play. Yeah, you got your Halos and your Gears and that stuff, but like The Last of Us, which was a exclusive for a long time, Metal Gear. I still don't think you can play the original Metal Gear Solid on Xbox. And then you got stuff like Ratchet and Clank, Uncharted, God of War, as you mentioned, The Last of Us, which was a exclusive for a very long time. Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, those originals were PlayStation. I have to say, at least thinking about quantity, we have to give it to PlayStation. I think just by the sheer number, it's going to be the quality there as well. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that, since I knew that you would have a lot more experience with these two console lineups than I do.
Yeah, I think it's like Xbox 360 had my time, but PS3 had my heart. Well, it was more or less where it was at. It was like you're playing on the 360 because that's where your friends are at. But I mean, like whenever you're gaming by yourself, for me, it was always the PS3. But we got an episode to talk about. We got a very interesting subject this week. Before we do that, do you wanna talk our call to action?
Sure. Yeah. Engagement. Call to action. Initiate now. Hey, thank you for listening to this episode. It really does mean a lot to us. If you like what we are doing here, it would mean the world to us if you would leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Audible, everywhere that you can review us. That really helps people find us. And any like good 5-star reviews, if you leave a note, we'd love to read that on air. If you are not aware, all of our episodes are on YouTube, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, give the episode a like if you like it. The bell icon's there if you are interested in notifications. You can subscribe to the channel for more of that juicy Dandies content. And more than anything, we love comments. We want to hear what you think about our exhortations, our thoughts on what we're talking about, whether you agree with us, disagree with us. We want to hear it. So leave a comment in the YouTube comments, or you can tweet at us at DisDandiesPod, and we would love to read any of those comments we get on the air as well. So that being said, it was your exhortation. I believe this is game number 2 for Game Pass Summer. What are we talking about this week?
We're talking about Code Vein. And my name is Jordan Milberger, and I am a Souls addict. I would say I do believe it's like it could be perceived as a problem by others. It's one of those things that my family is enabling and allowing me to just kind of have as my like comfort blanket, and I embrace that. I play a lot of Dark Souls games, or like Souls-esque games, whether it's like Hollow Knight or anything produced by From Software proper. It's the approach to combat and world building and like thoughtfulness in terms of being in a game world. Those are things that I really love in my video games, and that formula has all of that. Code Vein is that to a fault in some ways, but I mean, just to kind of give some background on it before we get too much into my thoughts in particular. The Code Vein, developed by Bandai Namco Studios. This is a weird situation where I did not realize this until I was putting together the notes of this episode. This is an in-house Bandai Namco game. They publish Dark Souls. So I see this as their attempt. They're sitting here looking at the fact that like From Software is moving on from Dark Souls. They're making other games. And even though Bandai Namco is publishing one of the games like Elden Ring, the Dark Souls series, which has a big sales number attached to it, is done. So being a game developed in-house, I see this as Bandai Namco looking at that formula and going, where else can we apply this and get some kind of monetary equivalence? Just wanted to note that before we go further into the conversation, that this is a weird in-house thing, because I had never even heard of Bandai Namco Studios before this. so it's a bit of an anomaly for me. As I said, published by Bandai Namco also, and this is unapologetically just a Dark Souls game. The entire skeleton of its combat is extracted wholesale from Dark Souls. Like they add some things to it, but fundamentally this is a Dark Souls game. Do you want to add anything onto that?
No, you're absolutely right. We have to remember that it is an in-house game from the creators, publishers, however you want to say it, of the original Dark Souls, which gives them a lot more leeway in borrowing, copying, plagiarizing, however you want to say it. In other Soulsborne type games, which I believe is the term that people use to talk about Dark Souls clones, right? That, the copying, the very almost simulation type gameplay and level design, all that type of stuff, have to do a bit more work to differentiate themselves, so it isn't just plagiarism. It seems like since this is in-house in a way, that they can get away with just reskinning a lot of what the original Dark Souls brought to the gaming industry. So we have to keep that in mind. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is pretty much just almost one for one a copy of that. And we'll definitely talk more about that as we go on.
Yeah, and just on that note, before we just to kind of put an asterisk on our initial impressions before we start talking about them, as much as it annoys me, because whenever I exhorted this, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best to mention Dark Souls as little as possible. I want to view this as its own thing and judge it off of that. I don't think that's possible. This is just so explicitly that, and it is trying to court at least a part of that audience, that I don't think that I can talk about this game without mentioning. I mean, not even just mentioning. You are more or less critiquing a spin-off of the Souls formula, So at least for me, I can't talk about the two separately in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with that said, Will, what were your thoughts on this game?
I actually really liked it. I wasn't able to finish the game. You told me that you have finished the game. Maybe I should have let you say that. But as we talk, just remember that Jordan has finished the game. I have gotten pretty much into it to where I feel that I've seen the meat of the game, but I have not finished it. I really liked playing this. The only Dark Souls experience that I have had is kind of getting about halfway through the original Dark Souls one with you, Jordan. Who was coaching me as we played through. Having that experience really helped me kind of hit the ground with my feet running on this game. But I really enjoyed it, and I kind of feel bad that I couldn't play any more of it. I enjoyed it. I am curious to hear what you have to say, being the Dark Souls, master, so to speak.
Don't say that.
I'm very curious to see what your initial impression was. What did you think just overall? Are you happy with the way that this game played out?
I don't hate it. I'm gonna have a lot of criticisms for this. It's one of those things where it's I do have a lot of bones to pick with choices that they made. But it is a respectable Souls clone game.
I will say that in a lot of ways, Dark Souls, I was frustrated with. I didn't understand what was going on. It was hard to figure out. I had nothing but fun during this playthrough. There were times where I was dying, but I never felt like, oh, this is impossible. I'm, done. This is, I don't want to play anymore. I always found it to be fun to play through in the way that Dark Souls was. I don't know if that has to do with the aesthetic choices or just a gameplay tweaks that they did, but I had a lot of fun with this. But let's just go right into it. We've already talked a whole bunch about this, but
to your point about some changes, it does make quality of life changes that we've seen in the Dark Souls series. I think this is more adjacent to Dark Souls 2, but not quite the step that Dark Souls 3 was, if that makes sense.
Sure.
There are some things that had this been a little bit longer in the oven, and maybe kind of watch more of what Dark Souls 3 did, that like as someone who's literally playing Dark Souls 3 right now, it feels like stepping back into Dark Souls 2, which is an interesting thing. You can almost see where this game was developed in the timeline, you know.
Oh, so we wanted to talk about how much this borrows from the Souls games, and I think we've already said this is pretty much just a one-on-one copy. So I would want to ask or talk about the things that kind of differentiate it, like the gifts, right? I would say that that's the one thing that really separates this from other Souls games. The gifts are the kind of powers that you get as you play, and they are separated into jobs, and we'll talk about the jobs here in a little bit. But in addition to the normal hacking, slashing, rolling, and blocking that you would know from a Dark Souls, that is, you have these powers that you can use, and they'll augment your abilities, do damage. How I thought that those were very fun. It took a while for me to kind of get used to those, kind of implementing them into the gameplay loop that we would expect from a Dark Souls game. But I really enjoyed playing with those gifts. How did you feel that added to the Dark Souls experience?
Yeah, I do like them, and it's something that like I think was to me the most interesting and like successful wrinkle to this game. Like, we'll talk about these guys in a little bit, but like, you know, the most obvious addition to this game is the addition of like support characters. This is a more subtle one that I think does more for me than any other addition that this game might make. That like, because the little like gifts that you like, they are a further customization of your character through gameplay. And I like that a lot. And I also like how it kind of allows you to bridge between different classes depending on the gifts that you're keeping between the two. So you don't have to be like all one class or not. And I think that's a very interesting idea because like your character is more your character than it would be in other RPGs where you're like, okay, this is my job and I'm sticking to it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I definitely noticed a step down in difficulty from going from no partner to having an AI partner. It definitely seemed like they were trying to, and I don't know if any of the other Dark Souls game implement this other than the first one, but it does seem like they were trying to kind of mimic the co-op experience. Even if you're playing by yourself, by having these partners, kind of like a Resident Evil 5 or something. And I noticed that you have the ability to play without partners if you want that, I guess, difficulty increase. But I noticed that I wasn't really ever really struggling getting through the normal parts of the game if I had a partner with me. And I enjoyed that. I was actually really surprised to find that if you do co-op with a real person online, like you and I did, we were able to play this a little bit together in a co-op scenario, that you also still get the AI character that helps out. So that really helped us as well. I was surprised to see that. So I enjoyed that addition to the gameplay, and I definitely felt like it's cool that you can not play with a partner to increase the difficulty if you want, but you get that feeling of like exploring this very vast, torn up wasteland with someone walking around with you. I did enjoy that part.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. Like I do, the characters themselves I did not like. And one thing that I didn't mind having them run around with me either. I wish you could have them run around with you, but no quips. Because there were a lot of times where it was like, you know, I'm low on healing items, you know, or be careful, and like, which fine. Mm-hmm. But then there were other things that for me kind of took away from the experience, like the exploration aspect of things, where they're like calling stuff out. They're like, you know, kind of trying to like coach you in the game and stuff. And it's like, I could see where that is appealing to people who maybe like want that. But for me, as someone who just kind of likes to like poke around and like explore the games and stuff like that a little bit, it did kind of like take the wind out of my sails. So I wish there was like an option to just like have them be quiet. which sounds
Sure.
rude, but it's just I felt that a lot, especially in the back half of the game when it's like they're coaching me on stuff that I've been doing for 15 hours. It's like, I don't. It's okay, man. I don't need it. You were mansplaining me, you know.
Sure, yeah, yeah. So you start out the game with two partners. Now you finish the game. Do you get more options of partners, or is it mostly the same people the entirety of the game?
No, yeah, you do get more options. And some of them are better. I would say like the two earlier options you get are probably some of the weakest. And some of the ones you get later on are a lot of fun, a lot of interesting ones. And they're tied to the classes that you're unlocking as well. You can kind of see their faces in the class options, you know. And I think some of them are cool aesthetically, and their like play styles are interesting. I think that I'll say it's a mixed success is where I'm at.
Well, in addition to the partners and the gifts, you get what they call codes or blood codes, and it's basically a job class system. Your character can level up, but in addition to that, they get to choose. They get to swap in between job classes, and then these have kind of the same effect on play as you expect. There are ones, it's like a more balanced fighter character, or a berserker, which really focuses on damage, or one that focuses on like offensive gifts, and then like a ranger type one, and then one that helps with exploration. And a cool thing that they do with these jobs is that they tie them to characters, some that you meet, some that you play with as a partner, some that are a part of your quote team, and they kind of, in addition to being job classes, they kind of give you a bit of story background on the characters who you're getting these jobs from. Jordan, did you like the job kind of situation with this game, and which ones did you focus on?
Okay, so the weird thing about the codes, so the gifts you can carry between classes. They're not restricted to a class. Whenever you unlock the gift and you assign it, if you switch from ranger to another class, you're still able to use those abilities.
That took me a little bit to understand, but yeah, you're right. That is something you have to like wrap your head around and like use to effect to kind of get to the more difficult parts of the game.
Yeah, and to that point, so really what the classes come down to is what you can't do. Because whenever you assign a class, there are certain weapons and blood veils. Blood veils are like, you know, gameplay modifying, like cosmetic things that they'll like, boost your strength or give you certain abilities, stuff like that.
They're a weird mix between armor and like equipment that affects your gifts, like your actual powers.
Yeah.
It's a weird mix between those two.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's like, so what is selecting a code actually do? It more or less tells you what blood veils and weapons you can't use, but then you're able to change your code pretty much on the fly. So it makes me wonder why have the code? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you can like ostensibly use any weapons or gifts or anything like that, like it seems like it's just a kind of an unnecessary barrier. I don't think that they're like bad or a failure or anything like that. It's just like especially the deeper you make it into the game, it just kind of becomes a menu inconvenience when you have to hop in and like swap to a different code that you're maybe dabbling in. I do like them in theory, but that's another thing that I would have liked to see more. Like instead of having something that just says you can't do this, like a way to make them more special, I guess, and mean more.
Yeah. So I would guess I didn't spend much time like analyzing the numbers under the hood, so to speak, but it does seem like the different jobs, the codes kind of affect your like stat scaling in some ways, but unless you like got out an encyclopedia or like the code vein Wikipedia and tried to figure out what these numbers do, it would be really hard. So if you aren't paying attention to those numbers, it really is just you unlock new gifts that you can use anywhere, and then it kind of tells you which powers or gifts or weapons that you can't use. So you're absolutely right. If you don't pay attention to those numbers, it doesn't really matter other than like HP. I think that's the only one I could really personally discern. I did appreciate that some of the jobs, when you switched between them, they would kind of give you a little blurb. Like I think the one that you get from Lewis, which is a a partner character that you meet pretty early on, made it clear that it's good offense but more of a glass cannon. They give you a little blurb that lets you know that that's kind of what that code is going to turn you into. But yeah, other than that, you didn't really know what it was going to do until you equipped it and it told you, oh, your favorite weapon, you can't use that. That was a little unfortunate.
Yeah, I will say, I think that you're going to end up being channeled into one. You might have like one other like secondary code that you're using, but for the most part, you're going to be It highly benefits you, similar to the Souls games, that you choose a weapon and you upgrade the hell out of that weapon and just use it throughout the game. And usually that encourages you to just stick to a code. And maybe you can like play around with your gifts and stuff, but more or less like you just like want to be dumping your resources into the same stuff so that you can get the highest damage values possible earlier, which kind of trivializes some of the bosses. But like I think that's just the mindset that like playing Souls games beats into you. It's like, focus this weapon, get good with it, then you can then the struggle isn't as great. One part of this that I know you said you were interested in talking about, and something I thought about a lot, is the map design. Do you have any initial thoughts on this?
I mean, honestly, I wanted to ask you about this because I could definitely see how they were trying to copy the like vertical, like non-linear type of level design from the Souls games. Like I could see where they were trying to do that. I had fun with the levels. I actually really enjoyed the dry trenches. I don't know if it's a good level or design or not, but like I had fun exploring it and trying to find all the different paths. There are a number of places where you can drop down onto another platform that is kind of hidden, so it helps. It rewards you for exploring a little bit. I had fun with it. I didn't get bored of it, but I'm wondering if someone who thinks about game design a lot, like you, Jordan, and knows kind of how the Dark Souls formula goes, how you felt about the map area design. Was it up to par to what the mainline Dark Souls games offer?
I think it plays it in such a way that it makes traversal a lot less frustrating, similar to what like Dark Souls does. Like, because one of the things that the Dark Souls series is lauded for is like, oh, it's very punishing, but whenever you like get the shortcut, it feels very rewarding. And I think Code Vein does a good job of like kind of taking that and applying it to their design here. The drawback is, and it isn't as natural as it feels in the Dark Souls games, because in like the Dark Souls games, you'll be, running around, find a ladder and then it'll take you back up to an area you were in previously. And you're just like, oh shit, that's crazy. I'm like right below it now. Oh, that makes sense when you think back on it. Whereas Code Vein, it very obviously like introduces like, this is going to be a shortcut for you later. And some of them are like, especially late game, are very much like, we created this pathway specifically for this shortcut, which can lead to a little bit more of like a kind of a corridor feel, rather than like we designed the game world to like fold in on itself.
Sure.
So it's like, I definitely don't have a problem with how they did it. It's just like, as long as we're comparing these two things, it's like they took the good idea and they implemented it to their game, which I would rather have than it not have the shortcuts. Because shortcuts they really do alleviate a lot of the frustration that comes from having to like redo zones after death. Because it allows you just to skip a lot of the stuff that you already had to slog through. And I think that that's just a very rewarding gameplay philosophy. And while it's not done as impactfully or as thoughtfully as it is in the other games, I do think that it's done well enough that it's still satisfying.
Yeah. You're right with the observation of the corridor feel. Not in gameplay or really aesthetics, but kind of doing all of the corridors, especially at the beginning of the game, really kind of reminded me of Final Fantasy which one is it, 13? The
Yeah.
one that, yeah, where like it feels very expansive, but if you look at it from a top-down view, it really is just a series of corridors. In Code Vein, it's a bit more branching in a way, but all of those corridors always kind of go back to the same area. But that being said, I did have fun with it, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't fault it so much. It's kind of almost like a step down in terms of complexity, which some people, maybe myself included, would enjoy. It's like a little less having to worry about that, and you can kind of enjoy the hacking and slashing a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely not like a mark against it. It's more like I'm glad it's there. I would rather it be there than them not make that attempt, I think is where I land on it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I guess with that said, I do think that there are less interesting like world design elements. Like there are more, and I guess this will bleed a little bit into the to our aesthetic discussion later on down the line. But like the world itself is not that interesting. It's more the look of it that kind of hits more, because this is a very like stylized game visually. There is like I think it is most interesting whenever it comes to the bosses and some of the more like surreal elements later in the game than it does when you're running through like the real world post-apocalyptic settings, because it feels very like, car here, fallen building here. Like they're not very like compelling like environmental choices being made, which is fine, but it does make it feel more like Final Fantasy 13 is an excellent comparison. I hadn't thought about that, but it does make it feel like Final Fantasy 13 in that way, where it's like this does not feel very like interesting to look at, but again, I kind of got that tune kind of changes for me whenever you make it to the later portions of the game, and it's like shuttling you through the more interesting boss and like area designs. It's more like the earlier half of the game whenever you're going through like the ruined cityscapes that I find less compelling.
Sure, yeah. And I'm willing to bet that in the later part of the game, you see the more interesting
Yes.
map design. And I haven't seen that. I'm looking forward to seeing that in the future. But we've mentioned it before, but just want to kind of revisit that, is that the gameplay is pretty much exactly like Souls. What elements of just like normal gameplay from the Souls games were you glad to see come back to this? What like felt the most like home for you in this game?
Well, so, and here's the reason why I ultimately like ended up liking the game and why I didn't like put it down. It does a good job of taking the methodical gameplay from the Souls games. It's a little bit more flourishy. There's a lot more like than Dark Souls 1 and 2, I would say. Not quite to the level of like Bloodborne or 3. But like there's a lot more like going on visually. It makes you it kind of does the power fantasy thing a little bit more deliberately, but it doesn't ever stray away from the like you need to manage your stamina. Your animations matter. Like you can't just like go in like crazy hack and slash and stuff, because you will get punished, even though this game is like ostensibly easier. It still feels like a deliberate, like kind of take your time game, which I really love, because it does allow you to soak in the game and the world more, and it makes your enemy encounters feel more significant whenever you're having to pay attention to what you're doing. And I will say, like, I applaud this game for being able to do that successfully, because it's not easy, because there's a lot of balance involved doing that.
Yeah. You can't fall asleep playing the game.
No.
It does have that Dark Souls difficulty to it. If you mess up a combo, or just stop paying attention, like,
Or don't level.
Don't level. Don't worry about your leveling up your weapons. You will get knocked onto your butt. There's definitely that. I would want to highlight the Dark Souls mechanics that are given a Code Vein flair. I'm thinking of the backstabs. In Dark Souls, if you get backstab, you get a special animation. It does more damage. It's clear that you like got one over on your opponent. In Code Vein, they have those as well. But the Blood Veil, it's like a special Blood Veil attack where you kind of drain Ichor, which is kind of like the mana for gift usage in the game. You kind of drain them more of that to refill your supply, and you get a really cool animation with usually with like these giant like twirling what would you call them, like snakes, appendages that would like rip out and like rip your opponent apart, almost kind of like Mortal Kombat in a way. Did you like those backstab animations?
Yeah, backstab animations are top. Like, they're great. They are very. I will say that's one of the more inspired elements that are attached to like your character customization. The first time I switched Blood Veils and then backstab someone and saw that different animation, I was like, okay, that's great. I'm glad that like again, like kind of make your character feel more specific to yourself by diversifying those things.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, one thing I will say in terms of like, because like for each like Souls game, they all have like their kind of like feel, I guess you could say. I think Dark Souls 1 and 2 have not aged the best in terms of like, I guess like playing the game. Like there's a little bit of like kind of a chuggy feeling to it, if that makes sense. And a lot of the more recent games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, they're much more fluid and fast, and they feel better. They don't feel as like slow, if that makes sense. I think this game falls a little bit more into the Dark Souls 1 and 2 camp, where it is more fluid, but it's still a little clunky. Like it does that thing where you have stored animations. So you do an attack, but maybe something interrupted you at first, or there's something in the environment that like got in the way. So like whenever you adjust, it'll still do the attack that you had initially like activated. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like the game says, oh no, that still has to happen, but it has to happen after this other animation is finished, which can kind of lead to a bit of a like I said, kind of like a clunky feel. The good thing is this game is not as punishing as Dark Souls 1 and 2, and this is a big plus because then it makes you feel less punished, because that's something that is the game's fault, not so much yours. But the game's difficulty is not such that you're going to just die because that happened.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did like how the animations as you were playing really mattered. There were definitely some times where I was trying to do some sort of like crazy combo, trying to get one over on my opponent, and I just got smacked because I got hit in the middle of me trying to get something off. Also with the gifts usually have an animation with them, and you need to make sure you're not going to get smacked as you're using one of your gifts or using your regeneration and gaining more health. You got to be smart about when you're using your gifts. You can't just use them willy-nilly. So that was fun. Speaking of gifts, one more thing I wanted to mention about those is that using the gifts felt very fun. I didn't feel like I really needed a deep understanding of the numbers behind the gameplay to just know that using the gifts were good and I was supposed to use them as much as possible, and knowing that they had a good effect on gameplay. Like there were a lot of ones that I would use if I was using the fighter class. I didn't really know exactly how they work number wise, but I just know, okay, this one makes me hit harder. This one makes me harder to hit, makes me, live longer. And I just was using them without having to know what exactly they were doing. And in that way, they were a lot of fun.
I guess if you're ready, I want to talk the actual character customization, like cosmetic portion of this game.
Right.
Pretty early on, and this is something that I will leg up on Dark Souls. I think it gives you a good amount of agency over designing your character in the first bit, like down to like, hey, here's your like starting look, and you can take pieces of it off and make it a little bit more like stylized to you. But I had some issues with like how much the game covered all of that up and then didn't allow you more agency over that later. What were your
Sure.
thoughts on it? I feel like I've kind of like put this conversation on rails, but I just kind of like I got to know your thoughts.
No, okay. Let's talk about the character customization. When you first start the game, that's the very first thing that you do is you create a character. And I have to say the character creation of this game is very well done. Lots of options, and lots of different ways that you could create characters. It did a good job of balancing, like being able to limit your choices in a meaningful way, but also giving you lots of choices to create lots of different things. I hope I'm being clear about what I said there. A lot of character creation that wants to be like very granular, wants you to be able to have control over everything, will have so many options that's really hard to know what does what. And if you don't have a end goal in mind, like you have no idea what any of these sliders do, it's too granular. I think that this one, for the Code Vein character creation, does a great job of not having all of those sliders, but still giving you a lot of meaningful choices that you could choose in between to create something very unique. I took a little bit of time to kind of browse other characters that people were able to make with the Code Vein, both male and female, and you could make a lot of different stuff with this character creation. I could definitely see me just having fun, just creating characters with a character creator. It's very well done. Just with the base character creation, how did you feel about it, Jordan?
Yeah, I did like that. I do like the ability to have your own character and it feel very distinct. The number of options presented to you and like down to like controlling like shoulder and like body size and stuff like that was like cool. And it was hold on one second, I got a cough. It felt very much like, hey, this is my character. I've made two characters. They both looked very different. Like, there were no elements to either of them that felt shared between the two. And like they looked like two different, albeit from the same anime, but like just two very different characters from an anime. And I think that for our fellow weebs out there, that's going to be a big positive in this game, and that like you kind of get to be the anime boy or girl of your dreams.
I have never played Devil May Cry, but you told me that the character I made was literally from that game.
It was just Dante. You just made Dante.
I had no idea. I was just trying to make a cool, good-looking boy character. So. Yeah.
But I think that this also, you commented on this whenever we were playing. This game does a pretty a pretty like deliberate job to cover up all that customization you did.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it, like between the blood veils and the masks that they make your character wear, it's not great because it's like, here I spent all this time creating this like very cool personalized character, and we have to shove a mask onto it and like cover its pretty face up, and the blood veils like take up a lot of like character design real estate. They are very flashy and they are cool, but it's like Will had a really cool turtleneck on his character and it was covered.
I made Dante Steve Jobs is what I did, and I couldn't even enjoy it all that much. Yeah, like you said, the blood veils, you are expected to wear them. They are like armor, and they have buffs that you want for your character. But if you equipped one, it like you only saw your character's like hair and then the flashy coat that they were wearing. So almost all of that work that you do at the character customization screen is just not visible. And in the cutscenes, I do think it's cool that your character gets a lot of screen time in the cutscenes so you can enjoy the character that you created. Even in the cutscenes, your character is still wearing that coat and wearing the face mask. All of the characters, when they're out of the home base. They all wear like a gas mask for a story reason that I don't think is that important to care about. And that's cool in its own way. But after you spend all that time making your character, you want to see your character. When we were co-oping together, I mentioned this, how I wanted to like see the character you created, but I couldn't because of the coat and the mask. So that's definitely a mark against this game that they would make a choice like that.
Yeah, and then they don't give you the ability to like get different clothes throughout the game. And I'll say, as like, both of my characters were female that I made, and the female clothing options suck in this game. Like, just pretty generally, there's one that covers you up that kind of gives you reasonable clothing for like a war zone, and the rest are very much what you would expect from a very like pandering anime game. I know you spoke a little bit about that too when we were playing, but like it definitely felt a little bit like, as someone who's not really interested in like hyper hornifying my characters, it felt a little bit limiting in that regard.
This is a horny game. I don't think we've said it yet, but let's just say it. It's an anime game. It very much leans into that. We know that the people playing this game want big, they want big boobs on their female characters. They want that anime aesthetic and everything that is implied by that. So in the same way that you, Jordan, as a Dark Souls fan, going into Code Vein, like, you wanted more Dark Souls. That's why, I would say that's probably why people pick up these SoulsBoing type games, or clones, if you want to be kind of mean about it. You want more of the Dark Souls experience, so you pick up this game, and these games lean into that experience because they know that that's what you want. This is also an anime game, so they're doing the same thing here. People who want these anime games with everything that comes with, want to pick up this game that has that style, because and this game gives them that. They go out of their way to give the female characters all of these objectification options, because they know that that's what the players who want the anime aesthetic are looking for. So we just have to note that this is a horny game. It leans into that, for better or for worse. I like what's the term? What's the nice term that I can use here? I don't mind eye candy in games. I don't. But there is kind of a level where it is like a bit too much, and I do think that this game goes a little bit beyond too much, right? As you mentioned, there's only one like sensible clothing option. I don't hate this game for having like the quote boob window option, but I would want like other things for players who don't want that, but there wasn't that. It really is all just objectification, and I think that's going a little bit past what is necessary, right?
Yeah, we here at Dandies are big like supporters of beautiful women. Like, let us be real. In retrospect, that sounds really like sleazy, but anyways, we were just like gushing a couple episodes ago about a tall vampire lady from Resident Evil. We love her, but there's this like tact and tastefulness that comes along with those things, where you like make them characters too. They're not just defined by their like figure or anything like that. Part of the appeal of like Lady D from Resident Evil 8 is she had the attitude to go along with the figure, Mm-hmm. Whenever you have something in a game that is just purely there for like, take a screenshot, maybe like you'll sit in like on your lonesome later type thing, it feels very blatant and a little weird. And then like for me, part of the Dark Souls experience, Fashion is important. Fashion Souls is something like, it doesn't matter how well that armor defends you. Does it look cool? Mm-hmm. Well, I chose, it gives you less agency in that regard. And I do think that like if there's ever a Code Vein 2, that's something I would ask for from them, is like, let me make my character look stupid if I want, please.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyways, we've been harping on like this for a little while. And I want to hit on a new Dandies segment.
Okay. I want to hear it.
Insert anime here.
Okay, what are you thinking here?
The entire like you kind of touched on it on that last point you made there, where this game was made to appeal to Souls fans. But it's a Venn diagram game. It's courting two audiences, with the hope that there's like kind of a shared, middle. It's going after the anime folks and the Dark Souls folks. And it's very apparent in how they designed this game, which is like, this is Dark Souls, but anime. That is like a very accurate, like summary of what this game is.
Mm-hmm.
What is making it anime enough to justify its existence as a game? Does the rest of what it does, or is the rest of what it does compelling enough to say it has anything other than an anime identity?
Well, I know that we're using the Venn diagram of Dark Souls and anime, but maybe a better way to think about it is Dark Souls and JRPG, which also has a huge overlap with anime. It might be more useful to think of this as Dark Souls plus a JRPG, and then all of the trappings that comes with. And I can definitely see that. We made the Final Fantasy 13 comparison earlier, kind of the more like flourishy, as you mentioned earlier, the aesthetic choices of the character creation, and then other things like the fact that they have a hot springs in the base that you can go and look at the characters that way. That you have a character that seems very modeled after the Sid from Final Fantasy 15. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that character exists. So that's a good question that you posed. I mean, both of us, I think, wanted to play this game. We were both attracted to it, and part of the anime aesthetic for it appealed to me. I wanted to see how this game actually played after seeing some of the screenshots and promotional material, seeing people post the characters that they were making, because I like that anime aesthetic, and it was cool to know that I was getting a Dark Souls experience on top of that. So I would say I think it adds to the game, and I think that this game does enough to justify its existence with the addition of the anime aesthetic. Would you agree, Jordan?
Yeah, I think that gameplay wise, it does enough. I think that you could have applied literally any other aesthetic to this game, and and maybe this is just something you can think about more whenever it comes to video game art design and stuff like that. Because I could see you making the same argument for other games, but it does feel very much like, all right, we're going to copy Dark Souls. Now let's choose the audience we're going to try to appeal to, and they chose the anime route. Just food for thought, because I think more so with anime than any other thing, we see it a lot. We see that like aesthetic applied to things. Like there are a lot of like Groundhog's Day-esque stories that you'll see where it's like, okay, but anime, like it's just a very interesting like wrinkle to like marketing or like appealing to people, because they know the anime nuts are going to buy this game. The Easy Allies make a really funny point on their podcast where they say you never bet against anime. Mm-hmm. And whenever it comes to sales, because like if you release a new One Piece game, a new Naruto, a new Bleach, they're going to sell. So this is like a blatant like play to like not betting against anime. And I bet this game did so. I didn't even look up sales numbers, but I bet if we did right now, it was probably very successful. So I think for this segment, because I have the intention to bring this forward in other episodes, I think it successfully did enough that wasn't its only identity. It is the majority of it, but it is enough that like Code Vein is its own game in that it had other ideas that it tried to apply to the Souls formula, whether successful or not, other than just the anime thing.
Yeah. I think that there are some other aesthetic choices that this game made that are very interesting. Mostly for me, I was very intrigued by the blood theme. That people had blood codes, kind of like blood types. I know that that's kind of a trope in Japanese society, is like how your blood type influences your personality. There might be a little inspiration there. I thought that was cool. The fact that you were finding trees that had these, like blood seeds that you had to find. That your main character's blood apparently purified some of these plants that were apparently growing from veins in the world, something like that. I really like that kind of blood aesthetic that was added to the game. Did you like that at all?
I think the like world building slash like lore here didn't. I think that was probably the thing that worked the least for me. I'll say.
Okay.
It just a lot of it reading into it just didn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like there
Sure,
wasn't
yeah.
there. It didn't adhere to any rules really, because like even like Dark Souls and Bloodborne also very blood dependent. Kind of establishes some rules that the rest of the universe adheres to. Um, like even if they don't fully explain it, you can always like go back to those rules to reference. This is just kind of like they say things and other characters understand, and I'm sitting here kind of left in the dark. I think it looks cool, but it wasn't necessarily an element that I was like it needed this, you know.
Okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough. I bet some people were also turned off by the blood aesthetic. Maybe some blood phobic people didn't like all
Yeah.
of that talk, and seeing the main character actually like it never showed them cutting themselves, but somehow they were able to like drop their own blood from their hand onto the plants. Maybe that would make people a little icky. Yeah, in addition to that, I can't speak too much about the story. It's a little convoluted, very JRPG in that way. I'm sure the lore, just like with Dark Souls, how there's like a deep lore kind of hidden underneath everything that people can really geek out over. I know that you do as well, Jordan. There is a story here. I don't think it's really worth paying all that much attention
No.
to be honest. And I kind of started checking out a little bit, here and there, but that's okay. I don't want to criticize the story all that much. But you play in a very post-apocalyptic world, and a lot of what you do is inside these like ruins. Like we go into the ruins of a park and like of a parking garage, and like ruined tunnels and places like that. It did get a little samey here and there, especially at the very beginning, because it's kind of really trying to set that aesthetic choice there. And the colors are not really there, other than like red for like blood and some other things. It's very brown. It's very like iron, rust, like dark grays type of colors. But that is there. If you like exploring post-apocalyptic ruins, wastelands, maybe you like the old Fallout 3 and everything being like a dark gray and green, you'll enjoy that aesthetic choice. How did you feel about the ruin kind of setting for this game?
Yeah, I kind of spoke to it a little bit earlier whenever we were talking about map and area design, I guess, but it was like more. I found it to just kind of be generic ruins a lot of the time, like broken down car here, fallen building there, very much like rebel-y. Modern post-apocalyptic type games like Fallout and stuff like that isn't really like an aesthetic choice that appeals to me. It never really has, and
Sure.
that's kind of why like I bounced off the Fallout games in the past. There's just not a lot going on visually in those types of environments other than just like rubble, and it doesn't it doesn't help me connect anymore to the world. You know, it feels like more like they used that for gating off areas than like anything else, you know.
Oh yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I could totally see some people bouncing off that as well. It really ties into map design, like we were talking about before. If you're using a certain aesthetic, like it also has to like serve good level design. So maybe I didn't bounce off of it that much because I was enjoying the map design that was being lent to having this like ruin architecture, kind of creating paths that were interesting to explore and see how they connect. That was serving that. So I actually enjoyed the ruin aesthetics. I'm looking forward to seeing how they iterate on that towards the end of the game.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think for me that about does it for Code Vein. Do you want to talk some quick hits before we close out?
Yeah. Let's talk quick hits here. Let me ask you, favorite playstyle. I know that you beat the game. What playstyle did you choose to finish this game with?
Yeah, so in terms of like gameplay options, I think the biggest addition to the formula in quotes that it had was the bayonet. It seemed like the weapon that was pushed in terms of like since it was like the most different from what you would see in like the Souls or Bloodborne games. So I was drawn to that and decided to play with it just to kind of see how it did. Ultimately, it like at least in the early parts of the game, it's a lot more weak than the other weapon options. But later in the game, there are some just absolutely brutal weapons that you can pick up and upgrade that really I really enjoyed. So I ended up playing a lot as the ranger class with bayonets. That I think that was it was very like satisfying as the game wore on. What about you, Will?
Oh yeah. So I started the game kind of with a like a heavy halberd type weapon. I think they call it the what do they call it, bardiche, or
Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
I used that quite a bit at the very beginning of the game. I wasn't a fan of how slow it was, and once I found like a good like quick sword type weapon, I think I finally settled on the Queenslayer sword. Once I moved to that, and my attack started becoming much quicker, and I think I even rolled a little faster with it. That really kind of upped the fun for me. So on my current playthrough, I've dumped a lot of my weapon leveling into the Queenslayer sword, and kind of doing a very quick like roll in, get a few hits in, roll back, let my stamina get back up, and use a lot of the gifts that just like you hit harder, your defense is up, kind of those like just buffing my own attack power gifts instead of using like offensive gifts. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like rolling around was very satisfying. I definitely plan on keeping that style of play as I continue.
Yeah. So I guess from there, Will, like you've talked about like continuing stuff like that. I guess you're planning on finishing the game.
Yeah. I have mentioned it a couple of times. I am very interested in finishing this game. I really do want to see what the rest of this game has to offer. I want to see the other partners that you get. I want to see like the cool different, because I know I haven't unlocked all the jobs yet. I want to see if there's a job that like really speaks to me, a code. So I very much want to continue playing this. I kind of feel bad that I didn't have more time to play this before we recorded, because I could definitely put a lot more time into this game. So I'm super stoked to keep playing this. I'm adding it to the pile with Dishonored, which is another game I need to that I really want to finish. You have already finished the story, but do you think that Code Vein is a game that you could play again with another character, or do you think that you've gotten everything out of it?
Oh yeah, I'll play it again. One of the appeals to these types of games is that there are a bunch of different ways to play it. Like, again, I did not hate this game. I wouldn't say I loved it, but it was like, I definitely didn't love it. But like, it was like enjoyable still. There is still like a fundamental thing with these Soulsborne like games and the things that borrow from it that appeals to me. And this does enough different from the others that I find playing it still enjoyable. It kind of helps whenever it's borrowing so heavily from a game that you love already.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're playing it, I would love to co-op with you. It's a lot of fun.
Do you think that we didn't really delve into like the PvP of this game, and I'm sure it's there, we just didn't really mess with it at all? Could you see yourself wanting to do like PvP, player versus player elements of this game?
I don't think so. I think that this game, and it's something that we kind of it would take a little bit more to like describe and talk about. This game later on has, and you kind of saw it yesterday when we were playing, the backstabs are extremely powerful in this game, to the point that you can virtually one shot. And then, I think that there is probably a meta to this game that is solved if we had to look, just based upon how strong that was. And I think that would not be very fun. But I really enjoy the co-op PvE in this game. It is interesting, and they did design the game well enough that like it keeps multiple characters in mind. It's like we died several times to like the second boss, I think it is,
Yes.
in the game. With like you and I and an NPC with us. And so the game is designed to scale and adjust to multiple people, which I like.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of fun. So did you have, I know that you played a lot of offensive gifts. Did you have any like favorite individual gift power that you always used? Or were you like always trying something new, always switching it up? Or did you find a gift that you just loved and was like leaning on the entire time?
I think Shifting Hollow is by far, and I'll explain what it does in this second, but it is by far my favorite gift in the game. So Bloodvein has a evasion system that, like, depending on the weapon or veil that you're using, borrows heavily from a different Soulsborne game. So Ranger was like a ranger-oriented blood veil. Sorry for coughing so much. Like, it borrows pretty heavily from the Bloodborne evasion system, where you're more doing a sidestep or a backstep rather than a roll. It's all stamina based. Shifting Hollow allows you to use your Ichor to evade and give you those iframes, invincibility frames, which allow you to dodge through attacks. So it's like an additional evade. So as someone who is playing a class that is benefited by like keeping my distance, it's really nice to be able to like dodge, attack, dodge, and then like if maybe I'm still in danger, I can Shifting Hollow away or Shifting Hollow back in to get a good hit in or a backstab on like an exposed enemy. It was just another layer of mobility in the game that I really enjoyed.
Oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. And the way you describe that absolutely sounds like a Dark Souls nut. Just so you know.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Will? Did you have any that you liked?
Well, like I said, I always just used the buff gifts that, so like anytime I knew I was going into a tough fight, I would just like, adrenaline, up my attack, use the one that gave me like a blood barrier, use the one that like made my first hit more powerful. So I would have to probably say adrenaline, just the one that just like ups your attack, because I felt like if I was just kind of like trying to explore an area, the ichor that I would get just from just fighting normal enemies would keep my ichor up to the point where I could just always keep that active. So I just constantly walked around with an attack up buff. So it's a little lame, but that was my favorite.
Hey, if it works, it works, man. And you are aggressive rhetoric. You are a mono red, very simple, poo brained person that likes to hit. I respect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to wrap things up, using that gift really kind of made me approach this more like a hack and slash game, which I think the game wants you to be able to do. It has those JRPG elements where, it is the Dark Souls formula, but it adds the anime kind of aesthetic to it. It adds the JRPG. So it seems like it wants you to kind of enjoy it in a more hack and slash way. You get the flourishes, you get the animations. So overall, it was just fun to play, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, same here. I think it is a win for a game that maybe is a little like a little morally compromised to exist. I think it is much better than what, like, if someone told you about this game's existence before you saw it or played it on the street and you were like a Dark Souls fan, you would probably like sneer at the proposition. I know I had some reservations going into it, but I think it stuck the landing. It did a good job. And it's something we didn't really mention too much is like, I do think the bosses are fun, especially like the late game bosses. They have some really cool designs and phases that I think they did a good job. It wasn't just it wasn't without passion or creativeness.
Sure. Yeah. I did get filtered, as the pro gamers say, a couple of times by bosses, but I never felt it was impossible to win. It was always like, okay, I'm ready to try again. I'm ready to try this other way of doing it. I was never like, oh, this sucks. I need to go home and do something else. So yeah, has a couple of flaws. Is a little horny and a little too horny in a couple of different places, but overall, it's a fun game. And if you know that you like Dark Souls, I would recommend this. Not that we're a review podcast. But I would mind recommending this to people who like Dark Souls and the anime aesthetic.
Okay, well, I think you have an exhortation for me for Games Past Summer Part 3.
Oh, yes, Game Pass Summer Part 3. So, we were talking about this yesterday. There are so many good games on Game Pass. I'm flipping through it. There's like so much that I want to play and also want to exhort. Now, kind of related to my question at the beginning of the episode, this is Xbox Game Pass. And I've always been a PlayStation person. So I'm thinking, what is on Game Pass that I wouldn't normally have an opportunity to play? We mentioned this a little bit before, but there are only a few franchises that you would think of if you thought Xbox original, right? So like three, I would say. Microsoft Flight Simulator, which I don't think that either of our computers can really play. Do you think your computer could pull that one off?
Very, very low settings, maybe.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Gears of War, which is also something I'd really like to try. But, when you think of Xbox originals, it's Halo. Am I right?
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay.
If that's where we're going, I'm excited.
I want to play Halo 3. So this is going to be the third Bungie game, and I think the last one that they did before they moved and started doing something else, Destiny. I have only played a tiny bit of the original Halo. I did play all the way through Halo 2 on original Xbox. That's my really only like real exposure to Xbox and to Halo, but I know that Halo 3 is it's well loved. It's like the Modern Warfare 2 of Halo games, and I have never played it. So I want us to play the single player campaign as much as we can and get a few multiplayer games in as well, just to kind of get our feet wet there, or get my feet wet. I know that you probably have a lot of experience with this game.
I will tell you right now that Halo 3 is one of my single most played games of all time. If you had to make me like count up all the hours in any game I've ever played, Halo 3, it's got to be like in the thousands of hours. Whenever I was in Texas, and Halo 3 came out, that was around the time that we got internet for the first time. I think I was like 14 or something like that, 13. And my dad got me Halo, because me and my dad really loved playing Halo together on the original Xbox, Halo 1 and 2. And when 3 came out, the fervor and excitement around that game was like fever pitch. And like just getting internet alongside that and being able to play online with my friends, I poured hours in this game. So I am very excited to play this with you. And if I can get you to, I would love for us to play this co-op, because it is like one of the best co-op single players out there, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. See, that's something I wasn't even thinking about. This is why I'm glad that we're talking about this together. I want to try this for the first time. I know you have some great insights on this game. So we're going to keep Game Pass Summer going strong with the quintessential Game Pass game, Halo 3.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. I'm excited to play with you. We'll have to talk a little bit more about it off the air. But let's cover some back matter and let's get out of here.
Okay, yeah, yes. Back matter, Jordan. What have you been up to other than trying to dress your anime character up in Code Vein? What have you been up to?
Well, so playing Code Vein made me want to play Dark Souls. As did the fever pitch hype for Elden Ring. So of course I've been playing a lot of Dark Souls 3, the Dark Souls of the three Dark Souls games, in my opinion, to play at this point. So I've just been playing a lot of that, playing with different builds, comfort food stuff. But outside of that, I've been getting into The Good Doctor with Tristan. It's a TV series about an autistic doctor who, I guess is just dealing with being an autistic doctor, is the best way to put that without spoilers. It's a little like corny, I will say, in some areas, but it is earnest and enjoyable, and it is very medically technical from what I can tell. I can't like fact check it because I'm not a doctor or a medical person at all, but it seems like they know what they're talking about a lot of the time, which maybe is misguided to say, but it's interesting. And me and Tristan have been kind of like binging that and enjoying it together. What about you, Will?
Yeah, so Doki Doki Literature Club Plus released just a couple of days ago, and I am a fan of that game. It's very important to me, and I'm hoping that maybe we could talk about it on here sometime. But it came out with new new storylines, and I have been so busy I haven't been able to play it, and it's frustrating, and it's terrible because I want to play more Code Vein, but I also want to play Doki Doki Literature Club, but also there's cool things happening on Magic Arena. So basically I'm vibrating over here with anxiety because there's so much I want to do and no time to do it, and I'm on summer break, so this is like the only time I have all the time to do this. So I will probably have a very action-packed back matter for our next episode. So check in on me in the next couple of days and make sure I didn't just like vibrate to death because I got a lot going on over here.
Yeah. And on that note, I was going to say, I didn't realize this. You had mentioned that there was a physical edition for Doki Doki Literature Club. So I ordered a physical copy for myself and Tristan because I knew that
nice.
she would want to play it after me, or like we would play together, whatever. And I did not realize that it had a separate release date from the digital version. So I'm sitting here like, damn, it's like August 31st or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have my pre-order for the physical version because I bought it twice. I bought a physical version and I paid $15 for it on Steam because I'm that much of a fan. But yeah, my physical copy isn't coming until the end of August too. So something to look forward to at least.
Yeah, maybe potential time frame in store there for a Dandies Doki Doki episode.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's wrap this one up. I think we're done here.
We're nice and toasty, ready to come out of the oven. Yeah, close this out, Will.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dandies. It really does mean the world to us. Joining us here episode after episode. All the engagement call action stuff at the beginning still applies. If you like this, rate us, review us, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell icon, all of that stuff. You can follow Jordan on Twitter at Action Pancake. I'm at Agra Rhetoric on Twitter, and we would love it if you would follow along with our exhortations and stay up to date on all the latest Disc Dandies excitement at Disc Dandies Pod. And join us here next episode for another spin with the Disc Dandies.
Goodbye, everyone.
Later.